You're listening to Releasing Trauma, a survivor's podcast. And now here's your host, Tracy Osborne. Hey, everybody, welcome back to the show. Today, we are talking about having the courage to live as your best self. And so many of us oftentimes downplay or we mask who we are, or we don't even really know who we are, or we're afraid to be who we are. So, today I hope we can, kind of give some encouragement and hope for those who are struggling with living authentically. And with me today is Leia Baez, who is an award-winning journalist, not a former journalist, but an award-winning journalist. And excuse me, she shared her own story of overcoming adversity, and it went viral online, reaching more than 6.5 million people across the globe. And her story proves the power of a positive mindset and inspires people to embrace those difficult times in life and to just have the courage to be you. So, Leia, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me, Tracy. I appreciate it.
I am excited to have you. And I would actually I don't normally do it this way, but I would actually like if you could kind of share with the audience a bit about your story of adversity and, and those struggles that you went through.
Yeah, sure. So, I was a newspaper journalist for more than 14 years. So telling other people's stories, that was like natural for me. That was easy for me. I could do it quickly and no questions asked. It was just like a part of who I was as a journalist. And I went through some really difficult times when I was still working in the newspaper industry. Went through a very nasty divorce and custody battle, even lost custody of my only child, my daughter. And I was forced into the lowest point of my life because, my ex-husband pointed out the fact that I had a problem with alcohol. And it was true. I was an alcoholic, but I was afraid to say that. I was afraid to admit that because, so many people in our culture do the same kind of drinking that I was doing. I was, a binge drinker. I drank a couple times a week to the point of drunk. But, when you have to prove yourself to the court that you're worthy to be a mother, I mean, talk about the shame and the self-doubt and the emotion that just overtakes you. And so, I was really forced to be in the lowest point of my life through those hard times. And so here I was, this on the surface, very successful, an award-winning journalist. Academically, I'd always succeeded and excelled in all the things that I was doing. But underneath, I was struggling. And I didn't know how to bring those two to balance because I had never I'd never done therapy. I had never done anything of that to heal things that I needed to back, things that were coming up for me from my childhood or anything like that. Because I didn't know that, my parents never went to therapy. That was just not normal. In our Mexican culture, we often, we have a strong faith and we believe our faith kind of pulls us through things, but we never went to therapy. And so I was struggling. I had some issues. And, it was really through those hard times that I was really able to, I hate to say it, but I often say to my ex-husband, thank you, because had I not been pushed down to that point, I would have never pulled back the curtain on what I was doing in my own life to hold myself back from being my best. And so, yes, the divorce, the custody battle, losing custody of my child devastated me.
I've been through divorce. I haven't had to go through a custody battle, thank God, but I can't even imagine how devastating it would be to lose custody of your child. That would kill me. So yeah,
it's like the only thing that I ever wanted to be in my life was a mother, and everything else I wanted to be as well. Like, I wanted to be a journalist. I wanted to, be successful, but it's like I wanted to be a mother, that was something that I wanted to be. And for someone to tell me that I was not good enough to be a mother, that I wasn't, in the right state of mind to be a mother. I mean, talk about soul crushing.
So, during this time, having to deal with the divorce and all of that, you ended up having to move back home and back into your childhood bedroom. So talk to us a bit about the night that you realized or noticed the glow in the dark stars.
Yeah, so I moved back home to get on with my parents to get on my feet financially because during the divorce proceedings, I had given up. I had agreed to leave the house because my ex-husband wanted to keep the home. I didn't want to keep the home anyway, so I was okay with leaving. But that meant I didn't have enough money in savings. I was struggling, so I didn't have enough money to get a place of my own, and so. My parents welcomed me home with open arms, and I'm very grateful for that. I'm very fortunate to have a family that has done that because I've heard many stories from many women, who didn't have a family to go back to when they went through something like this. And so I was so grateful to go home, but I will, admit, like going back home to my childhood bedroom. I mean, that's like a slap in the face in itself. It's like, I was already a homeowner. I was already, on my own. And
right.
Here I am. Now they're like pushing me back to square one, and in a weird way, I believe like I needed to go back to home base I kind of like to call it because I needed support. I needed love, unconditional love, because I was in a really bad place in my life. And so I was it was like one of the first nights that I was in my room and I had been crying myself to sleep just about every night because I was an emotional wreck. And I was in the same bedroom that I slept in as a child. And so, the room was still teal colored walls. I had painted them in like the 6th grade. And like, those glow in the dark stars were still on the ceiling. And it was so funny because they were still glowing too, and I thought that was kind of interesting. But, I wasn't thinking about what those stars meant to me yet. Like I was still just very emotional to be back home and to kind of feel just like, a failure, to feel like I had failed as a mother, as a wife. And so I was getting ready to fall asleep one night and I just happened to something just kind of come over me. And I looked up at those stars and I remembered that when I was a kid, I was in 6th grade, when I had first gotten those stars with my mom at Kmart. I miss Kmart. I miss Kmart, by the way.
I know.
Those stars were still, they were glowing up there and they were just kind of like this weird, and I might have been just like hallucinating because my eyes were full of tears, but I felt like they were just twinkling at me and like, trying to give me a message, like to come on and, pull yourself up. And when I was a kid and I was in 6th grade, when I got the stars, I made a wish on every single one of them. I was, wishing for success and all these things. I remember I wished on one I wanted to be a professional ice skater. That never happened. That never happened. But so many of my dreams did come true, And so it just kind of reminded me, my dreams are still out there. Like, yes, I'm going through this very shitty time. Sorry, I don't know if I can say that.
That's okay.
This very difficult time, and I'm really emotional, but I can still be great. I can still have my dreams, and I can still do everything that I wanted to do. It's just going to take a lot. It's going to be a little bit, more difficult, but I can still do it. And so it was just like this little burst of hope that I needed. I needed that hope to kind of lift me up because honestly, I felt like my life was over. And I'm gonna be honest, like I had these terrible thoughts in my head, like, is my life even worth living? I don't have my daughter anymore. Everyone knows I'm a loser. These are the things that I was thinking in my head. And I needed that little burst of like, come on, you got this, because I was so desperate for just, some inspiration and just some hope for the next day.
Yeah. It's when you're down on basically rock bottom, it's tough. It is a struggle just to wake up and do what you need to do. So that little bit of hope gives you kind of that light at the end of the tunnel feeling that, okay, there is something else out there. I can move forward. Can't go anywhere but up. So might as well start climbing. So, what did you do? How did you pull yourself out of it?
So, magically things didn't just get better or anything like that. But, I did get the courage to, I decided, because when I was with my ex-husband and we were together, I'd always wanted to go back to school and get my master's degree. And there was always a reason why it was not a good timing for him. It was like financially, we shouldn't do this, or, there's all these reasons. And so I was on my own now, so I could do what I want, so it was nice. And so I decided the very next day I was going to apply to grad school. And so I decided, hey, this is the hardest time of my life right now. I'm in the midst of this custody battle. I'm fighting to be my best self. I'm desperate for some inspiration, hope to keep me going, but I can still better myself. I can still work on me. And for me, education has always been empowering. Like, I've always loved going to school. That's always been my jam, and so I knew I wanted to get my master's degree years before this happened. And so this was just like the perfect timing for me. And so I applied the very next day to grad school and decided, even during the most difficult time of my life, instead of focusing on the negative, instead of focusing on everything that was like tearing me down and how I was in that lowest point of my life, I decided that I was going to do everything I could to pick myself back up. And one of the biggest things that could do that for me was education, because I always felt empowered in the classroom. I always felt like, I'm learning, I'm growing, I'm making myself better. A master's degree would make me a better candidate for a higher paying job, several different, opportunities out there. And so this was it was a no-brainer for me. So that's what I did. So those stars pushed me to get my master's degree.
Nice. Definitely, reach for the stars. Now, in regards to the alcoholism, had you already dealt with it at that point, or was that still something you needed to take control of?
So I would say that I was during that point, I was still a bit in denial that I had a problem with alcohol. And I didn't address it yet. So I hadn't addressed it when I was still in grad school, because there were times where I would be writing an assignment or writing an essay and downing a whole bottle of wine at the same time. So that wasn't addressed yet. And okay. I wouldn't drink around my daughter ever or anything like that. But I would drink a bunch when she was visiting with her dad, and she was with him
right
during his time. So, but yeah, that it's so difficult for a person to understand that they have a problem with alcohol in our society today, because alcohol is it's glamorized, it's everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so hard for people to understand that they have a problem, because so many people have a problem with alcohol. And so I felt like I was one of those people. I got drunk to the point of blacking out at times, but I'm not an alcoholic, and I was just in denial for a long time. Right. So it wasn't until a few years later that I had some a kind of a series of events that happened that I decided to give it up.
Well, that's, I'm so glad that you did, for so many reasons, but I know that, like you said, it's everywhere. It's just kind of the norm, hey, after work, let's go down in the bar, have a couple drinks, or, have a glass of wine while you relax at night. Next thing you know, one glass turns into two, turns into a bottle. And,
I always joke I always joked that my happy hours would turn into the after hours.
Yeah.
I would start, after work, and then it just never stopped. And that was my problem. I never had a turn off button. I wanted the party to continue. I wanted to continue to socialize and have fun. And I wanted to keep going. And so, I was an alcoholic, and I am an alcoholic, but I'm grateful that, I'm more than 2 years sober now. And I will say that, to the topic of, living your best self, I knew for so long, Tracy, that I had a problem with alcohol, but I didn't have the courage to admit it because I didn't know how to do it. I didn't know how to stop. And it wasn't until I had some really hard conversations with my therapist that I decided, that this was holding me back. I knew it was holding me back. I knew alcohol was the one thing in my way of being the next best version of me. Like I knew I was going to kind of just catapult to this higher level of self when I could quit alcohol, but I didn't know how to do it, and I didn't know how to do it with it being everywhere around me. All my friends drink, several of my family members drink, and so how could I be the one going from the party girl to the girl who says no to alcohol? How can I really do that? How can I make that happen? And it was so intimidating to me. And so it wasn't until my uncle passed away from cancer, and he was only 59, that I decided, how I said, I'm in my 30s, and if I only have, 20 something more years to live, am I really living the best version of me? Am I really living as my best self? And I knew I wasn't. And so that kind of made me rethink my decisions and my health. And I decided to quit. And it was this like very spiritual experience for me. It's very, I felt like he's my guardian angel. I felt like my uncle was kind of pushing me to quit too. And so I just quit. And so November 7th, 2019 is my sober birthday. And it's been so incredibly eye-opening and amazing. And I mean, I've done so many great things in just that short time, 2 years, that I can't even believe that I've wasted so many of my years, living unhealthy. But I'm just really fortunate that I'm, only 39 and I still have several more years to live as a sober, healthy person.
Right.
And as that best version of me. So
I like that you are thinking about, or even back then we're thinking about, I'm not living the best version of me. It's, and also the, how can I go from party girl to non-party girl? It's kind of changing who you are, but who you are isn't really the party girl. That's, the party girl is masking who you really are.
Yes.
So it's almost like you had to remove that mask and, look in the mirror and finally see, okay, this is me. This is Leia. This is who I am. And I need to hold that and own that and be that, not only for yourself, but for your child.
Right.
Yeah.
And, that was the other thing too. I, thankfully, we went back to court and I was able to win, we were able to settle on joint custody and, so I was able to get my daughter back. But during that temporary time, I didn't have my daughter, that was very hard for me. And so what did I do? The only thing I knew how to do to like kind of shut those emotions off was to drink. And so for me, that became a coping mechanism during the, a really hard time. And so I knew that, I had to break free from that. There had to be a healthier way for me to go through some of those hard times. Otherwise, I'm going to I don't want to be that person. I don't want to show my daughter that's how we handle our problems. And so it was really a miracle for me to be able to come to this awareness and just to know that I needed to quit. But it's so incredibly amazing to see how my story has now inspired other people to rethink their drinking habits or just rethink what's holding them back from being their best. And I am fortunate I get to speak at, different events and talk to people. And I actually had time to publish a book, Tracy. I mean, I would never be able to write a book if I was still drinking,
That's right. A star for Stella. Tell us about that.
Yes. So A Star for Stella is just my memoir through those darkest moments of it kind of takes you through a tragic evening of why, how I lost custody of my daughter in the first place, and really just follows me through moving back home, deciding to go back to school, and then just really finding myself and realizing that I was an alcoholic and I didn't know how to admit it. And kind of my course to follow me through this journey of admitting that you have a problem, but then finding what's in your way of your best self and breaking through that. And that's what I did with alcohol. For me, whenever I would drink, it would end up turning into, terrible things happening. Like, I'd end up wanting to do drugs, or I'd stay up all night, and, who knows, but it was just like all these domino effects of problems. And I didn't know how to eliminate the alcohol. It's like, so if I can just eliminate the alcohol, I could live a better life. And so it kind of details some of those wild nights, and it just kind of takes you through my journey of finding my best self and being the best I can be for my daughter. And, it was a really emotional journey to write that, because I had to go back to those nights and back to those really hard moments. And I was I didn't expect to be crying as I'm writing, but it was, it was very emotional, but
it's very healing to write and get your story out. Absolutely.
Yeah. So healing.
You said something, and I want to make a note of that. You said, if I'm an alcoholic, how can I live my best life? Or, if I drink, how can I live my best life? And that made me think, my problem is with food, and my masking is the food thing. And, it just got me thinking, because I've been thinking about that a lot today, is I'll be happy when I lose the weight. I'll be happy when I quit drinking. I'll be happy when I, do this, that, and the other thing. And that stops us from living our authentic life, our being who we truly are, because it's that, well, I won't be happy until this happens. But, if it doesn't happen, then what does that mean? You're going to live the rest of your life unhappy. And so it's almost, that mindset, it's, I'm going to be happy now with who I am today, and make those changes that I need to change in order to continue to be happy and continue to have a good, fulfilling life, and, remove that mask and be who I am. So, it's almost like, you have to kind of reverse it in your head. It's, not I'll be happy when, it's I'm going to be happy now, and I'm going to be even happier as this goes away.
Yes. I love that. Yeah. Those reframes and tricking our brain is something that, one of the things that I had to do very often after I quit drinking, because there was all this kind of chatter in my head going on. Oh, you can just have one, and I would have friends tell me that.
Oh yeah.
And I would have friends tell me that. And I literally would have to do these exact same things you're talking about, is reframing my mindset, because I had to be in control, and I had to, no, that is not true. Stop thinking that. You don't need a drink. You can, you can exercise, you can meditate, you can do other things to get that same feeling. Take a deep breath, and it's kind of interesting how, when we do reframe those things, how it makes sense. It's just like, oh yeah, I don't have to do that. I can do it this way. And that makes more sense. But I feel like we're so wired a certain way because of society and everything around us. We have to be skinny to look pretty. We have to,
exactly.
Be a party girl to be fun and have friends and be social.
Right.
But, it's really freeing when you can do those reframes. I will say that it's very freeing when you're in control, and you can, take back that mindset power. and
it is, and it's so eye-opening. It's like, wow, I feel like I've been living with, either blindfolded or blinders on my whole life, all of a sudden I can see color, I can see life, I can see, everything. And then it's like, God, I wasted how many years living like this?
Right.
But you can't really beat yourself up for that. It's just, okay, that was in the past. Like, now I have all of this future ahead of me, and I can live an amazing life from today on out.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, Leia, thank you so much for coming on and, sharing a little bit about your story, talking with me today, and, hopefully giving our listeners some words of encouragement and hope that, change is possible. You can be your authentic self, whether you need to make big changes like getting rid of the alcohol, or, maybe it's even changing your relationship, or changing where you live, or changing your career. Whatever it is, life is there for you to enjoy and explore. So thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think the awareness is so key, just being able to have that awareness of what you're capable of, and who you want to be. It makes all the difference,
Absolutely.
Just slowly removing those things in your way.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Listeners, I will have all of Leia's contact information down in the show notes. Just go to therealityofitall.com and pull up Leia's episode, and all her information will be there. The link to her speech so that you can listen to her speech, and, her website, her book, all of that good stuff. So again, Leia, thank you so much for coming on. And listeners, thank you as always for tuning in, and we'll talk to you next time. Thanks for tuning in. Be sure you hit subscribe on your favorite podcast platform so you don't miss a show. Be sure to check us out on our new socials on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.